This is Jessica Schneider, editor of the Loveland Voice, and today we are happy to be interviewing Martin Lind, who is, well, you know what, Martin, I'll let you introduce yourself. You have a lot of roles in our community, but in particular, your role at the airport.
Yeah, I do. I wear a lot of hats. Hi, Jessica. I am the master developer of a project at the airport called Discovery Air, and it's a fairly big aviation campus that will have an FBO, which is a gas station for jets and general aviation. It'll have hangar and mechanical services for aviation. And we just recently announced, super excited about the Ames Community College Technology Campus, which will probably produce about 100 really high-skilled aviation mechanics and avionics experts that will have instant jobs. So we're super excited about that. It's a big building, 35,000 square foot building, and our hope is that in the next 5 years we'll be fully developed out.
That's amazing. And I want to ask you a little bit more about some of those new developments, but I want to go backwards a little bit because the Loveland Voice has been reporting on quite a few issues at the airport. So just going back to maybe refresh folks' memory, I mean, we've talked about the terminal that's being built, the remote tower that didn't have a contractor, but maybe now does. The runway that has been effectively out of use due to the terminal building, hangar evictions, there's like so much. What were, like going back, let's say 6 months, what were your biggest concerns at the airport?
Okay, sure, thank you. The piece of doing this interview, Jessica, is that I have said all of these things at public hearing, and it's not like I'm going to hurt anybody's feelings by just being honest here. I have not been a fan of how the airport's been run. And listen, that doesn't mean anything. I can have opinion on how things are run, and I can be wrong. But I think where my position is that pretty much everything at the airport's a failure. And I think staff will probably disagree with that. But if you look at the track record, we started in 2016 with a virtual tower. I was a big fan of the virtual tower, huge fan of that, until it came down to the last couple of years where the virtual tower just wasn't getting through the cheese maze and it wasn't happening, which is fine. I get it. I'm in the land development business, so we do everything for 30 years down the road. But when the most important ingredient of an airport, which is air safety, is being compromised, and everybody is tone deaf to the tsunami warnings that I and others have been screaming out there. And then you get into the operational issues of not having a real live tower operating with real live radar. You not only have less than optimal safety issues, which is, this isn't Martin Lind's opinion. This is just the way it is. That if airport has Class D airspace, which is operated by a tower, doesn't matter if it's a temporary tower or a real brick and mortar tower, doesn't matter. But if that tower has radar access and that tower has every piece of sophisticated equipment that any other Class D airspace has, then my voice needs to be silenced. I need to just be completely quiet, but that's not what we have here. And even today, we're operating this airport with less safe airspace than if we go down to Jeffco, or if we go to Centennial, or if we go to DIA, or if we go to Cheyenne. Those are actually radar controlled airspaces. And what that does is two things. One, it gives a positive ID to the controller of exactly the spacing distance between all aircraft, but it also creates operational efficiency so that when there's an airplane that needs to depart the tower, doesn't matter if they're sitting in a trailer or in their beautiful glass Taj Mahal, doesn't matter. The tower knows exactly the speed and the distances of separation. So they can get departures out without taking risk to the departing or the approaching airplane or jet. So what that has to do with is you cannot, if you only have a visual or an oral contact with the person in the air. And I think you got to ride around a little bit recently and so you got to see how that works.
Yeah.
So you have that, But if you have an actual database that you're looking at on a screen and you can exactly see your distances, your times and your speeds, they can depart aircraft much more efficiently. They can bring in aircraft much more efficiently. And, you know, if you can get into all kinds of social issues, which come to be with carbon footprint of a jet setting on the end of the runway, which, to be very honest with you, that's not one of my big complaints. My big complaint is air safety. And then you get into air efficiency. And then you get into the documents of this airport, and it is well documented that we have lost commercial service for Allegiant because of our air safety issues. We do not have radar control tower. And so that leads in, that's the segue into the terminal. But when it comes to air safety, I think that Northern Colorado deserves to be as good or better than any other place in the world. And we treat all of our customers, we treat all of our businesses that way. We're proud of Northern Colorado. We think we're the best place in the world to live. Why should we have subpar anything? I don't care if that's the carpet in the terminal. I think we deserve the best. So, and I will always maintain that. So when it comes to air safety, that's one of my big pet peeves. That leads into the next deal, which is operational, which leads into the next deal, which is a commercial service isn't coming until we have it, which leads into the next deal, which is the terminal. Well, in my world, we don't get to build buildings without tenants. So my bankers won't loan me money to go build a building. So I guess if I just use my own cash and I believe in it so well, like the airport's doing, that's great. But we don't have the air safety issue settled. So now we're building a terminal. And to me, that's backwards. We should have infrastructure first. Then we should build whatever the terminal needs to be. And quite frankly, I think the airline, whoever wants to come in, could be a big part of that solution. If they have a lease, if you know, or if they sign a lease, we could go build more. Quite frankly, the terminal to me is, you've seen the elevations of it. It doesn't do at all Northern Colorado justice. I think we deserve a much more architecturally beautiful terminal. I think we should have something that's reflective of the area, something that hangs on to both the history and the heritage of our area. This terminal is, you know, I'm very vocal about it. I think it is just it's a fabricated, hurry up, let's build this thing before anybody's looking. And I don't think that's what Northern Colorado should have. I think we should have, there's the old saying, you only get one chance to make a first impression. I've been into very tiny little airports all over the globe that have beautiful terminals that are reflective of the heritage of the area. For instance, if you fly into Hilton Head Island, that Hilton Head has a fraction of the population of Northern Colorado, a fraction. And they've got a really cute little terminal that's got the green Mediterranean look roof, you know, that kind of fits the Florida Key, you know, that whole DNA of coastal living. That's what's reflected with the architecture of the terminal. And it's little. I mean, it's probably the same size as what we're talking about building here. But you're talking about an island that maybe has 50,000 full-time residents and then probably triple that with guests. But we have 1 million people we're going to serve. So another great example is if you fly into Branson, Missouri, that's kind of the home favored town of Johnny Morris with Bass Pro, and you know we're doing Bass Pro stuff. But if you walk in that terminal, there's a Bass Pro DNA and the motif and the log cabin and the, you know, the squirrel sitting on the porch. And so none of that was taken into consideration with this terminal. So again, that first impression opportunity, we're going to lose it. We don't have a tenant. Just as late as last week or last month, it was disclosed that the runway expansion for the airport, which was supposed to be calendar year 2024, was supposed to align with the opening of the terminal. Well, it was moved back to 2025. So now we have this hurry up. We have to build the terminal. It's got to be open. And now we've absolutely confirmed in writing through the budget that the runway expansion of 3315 isn't going to happen now till 25. So even if they were to get a commercial service, nobody's going to come in 24, 25 and know that they got to shut down for that 6 or 8 or 10 week period when the runway shut down.
Right. Okay. Well, and can I, thank you. Do you mind if I interrupt and
no, please.
ask a question?
I was rambling.
It's okay. Well, that was a lot of information. I want to like come into like closer to real time. So we just held an election And Don Overcash is no longer representing Loveland in any capacity, which is going to include being the chair of the airport board commission. So what in your perspective, like, who do you hope will be appointed to replace him as chair of that commission? What opportunities do you see given the recent shakeup with elections?
Well, I will tell you, and it's no secret, in the last decade of working at the airport, I have been screaming the tsunami warning. I've been pounding the bell. And until, quite frankly, Jenny Arndt got on the board from Fort Collins, nobody really gave me the time of day. Nobody really, was always staff over stakeholder. And Jenny, Mayor Arndt in Fort Collins started asking some pretty sincere questions and started paying attention. And, I think she's probably earned the chairmanship, and I hope she gets it. I don't know anything about it, but she's definitely been one that's paying attention and asking some questions. And when questions don't get good answers, you have to ask more questions.
Yeah.
And so I think that she would be great. I think, it's no secret, Don Overcash, he wouldn't listen to me. I pleaded with him to listen to me to some of these warning signs. And so I gotta be honest with you, it can't be worse for me and my company, and honestly for Northern Colorado. I just am kind of looking forward to seeing what the new board does and the questions they start asking and the action items that they can actually take to make a difference. We talked about air safety, we talked about virtual, we talked about temporary tower. One of the most maddening things I've seen in my entire career out there is they basically cram through the terminal and they run out and they put a construction trailer out there to put the terminal in. They've had years to plan this, years. And they put the construction trailer in the line of sight view of the virtual tower, of the temporary tower. And so now all of a sudden they have to shut down a perfectly good runway, the crosswind runway, because of a physical obstruction. Has nothing to do with the physical defect of the airport, of the runway. So now again, here, air safety quality goes down even more.
Right.
Crosswind runway is a very important thing, especially with this heavy student pilot population. I think Rick told me that he took you on a lap and it was windy and you got to see what it was like. And, it's no fun as a young pilot having to land in a crosswind. It's really no fun to have to land in a crosswind and not have an option. So again, they had years to put together a good plan so that when they did build the terminal, that it wouldn't obstruct and wouldn't shut down very important public assets, but it did. So I'm thinking that they, as far as I'm concerned, that day that happened, I sent a letter saying, hey, move the trailer. And the answer was, well, it won't help because in 90 days, we're going to be building vertical walls on the terminal and that's going to block it anyway. And I'm going, well, that gives us 90 more days of safety and gives you 90 days to get to the FAA and move the temporary tower so that it can forever have line of sight to both these assets.
Right.
But again, here we are 90 days later with that runway closed and nothing's been done.
Yeah. And I did have the opportunity to go up with my son and with several other members who are now serving on council so that they could see those things and experience the importance of the crosswinds runway. And I've spoken with folks at several of the flight schools and some students about how hairy that can feel not to have that opportunity. This is there. So you're partnering with Ames now with Discovery Air. Is there any is that going to be able to increase safety, or is that just but is that anymore?
So here's the beauty of the Ames campus is it's a mechanics school. So the planes are going to be in the hangar. They're a static, actual physical piece of classroom that they'll be working on every day. So the Ames Technology Center doesn't really need a lot of flights in, flights out for it to operate. Now, Ames does run a really big flight school out there. And, I think our airport's one of the heaviest student airports in the region and could be, I don't know, there's a lot of really big ones in Florida, but it's certainly in the region where the heaviest student population. And I think that we should have a very high conscientious awareness of safety first out there at this airport.
I appreciate that. And that's what I've heard from so many other pilots and students and flight school instructors, safety first. And having flown with some of these pilots, I'm so impressed with the dedication to safety. And I can personally see and hear how disappointing it can be when the infrastructure doesn't support the care for safety that it appears to me all the pilots I've met really adhere to.
Well, the aviation industry, Jessica, is a very dynamic industry. So when you get your pilot's license or when you get your mechanic A&P license, you have a very high likelihood of buying a house and feeding your family with your degree. A very high likelihood, because the aviation industry pays very well. That's not necessarily the case for someone that gets a liberal arts degree after 5 years and $250,000 of student loan debt. You're out there dog eat dog trying to find a job. The aviation industry is starving for pilots, mechanics, avionics experts, drone experts, everything. So what Ames is going to provide at this airport is priceless to these young kids that are chasing the American dream.
That's awesome. That's great. That's good. That's a good asset to our local economy.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So thank you for that. Is there hope in your mind? Like what's the timeline for potential commercial air? I imagine many people such as myself would really love to just head up the road and fly out of the Northern Colorado Regional Airport as opposed to fighting traffic on I-25 to go to DIA. Like,
right.
From your perspective, what's the timeline if everything goes better?
So I believe, Jessica, if we were just on a pure capitalist market versus customer versus asset, if we were on that timeline, the perfect timing would be about 20 years ago.
Right.
About the same time, it's really good time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. But the fact of the matter is we have almost 1 million people in our catchment area. So that's basically, if you look at it, it's a very similar demographic to our Colorado Eagles model. How far will they drive and come up here, and what's the value to that entertainment, to that family? That's a very similar encatchment area to the airport. It's Cheyenne South, it's Longmont North, it's Estes Park East, and it's basically Kersey Greeley West. And that's about 1 million people there. Well, 100% of those people right now, if they want to go anywhere via air travel, they're going to pay a toll road on 470. They're going to pay $30 to $50 a night to the city and county of Denver to park there. They're going to pay landing fees at DIA. And so there is a demographic that is leaving Northern Colorado, that's driving to DIA to get access to the world, that would, if they could leave Loveland, would leave here. Yeah. And I think the market shows that. I think the Legion Airlines were packed. They had to refund 7,000 tickets. I think it was when they opened up the next flight in 2019, and they were going to come back. And then we didn't meet the controlled airspace promise that we had promised them. So they backed out. They had to give, I heard, 7,000 tickets. And right on the ticket refund, it said, due to air traffic safety issues, we can't service this. Right on the ticket. So now what have we done? We haven't done anything for air traffic safety, but we were building a new terminal. That's just complete, to me, backwards. That's, to me, that's just completely backwards. It would be like me building a new golf course and just say, well, I think the golfers are coming. I'm going to build the greens later. I'm going to build the clubhouse first, and then we'll build the greens later. We need the infrastructure first. Yeah. And so, and this is no secret. Anybody that's seen me at the airport commission meetings, this is a, I'm preaching to you off of the cuff. I don't have cliff notes. This is not a rehearsed deal. This is exactly how I honestly feel.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, I mean, could you even perceive of like maybe in 10 years, if thing A, B, C, D, and E happen correctly, or is it, I don't know. Do you have any perspective on?
We always talk about this fun little model where if I was king, right? I feel like we're terribly underfunded by the FAA. And I think that's our own fault. Okay. I feel like our peer group gets way more funding per capita than we do. And when I bring that up, I get the boilerplate language. It's not based on per capita,
Mm,
but I do know fundamentally in America,
mhm,
voters are based on per capita. And
right.
the louder the voter population screams, the more attention we could get from our governor and our senators and our representatives. And we could get back to the FAA and we could get our fair share. And then we do it backwards. We build the infrastructure that the airlines need. We build the runways and the safe airspace, and we build the parallel runways so that if there happens to be a mishap on a runway, say it could be a flat tire.
Mhm,
You know, you have scheduled service coming into our new terminal, and there could be a student that popped a tire out there, and now all of a sudden you got to get a tow out there. It's not that simple, right? You have to be kind of careful with aircraft.
Yeah.
And let's just say it's even 10 minutes. Well, that scheduled service is going to have to divert or circle while
Mm.
this happens. And then you got to make sure you get rid of all the FOD on the runway, and you got to make sure that there's no debris out there. And so I just feel like I'm just in envy of going to Colorado Springs and seeing scheduled flights in and out every day, and big crosswind runways and controlled airspace. And their population base is less than ours.
Wow. Right.
And they're about the same distance to DIA.
Right.
Aeronautically. So it's just like, why them and not us? Provo, Utah is exactly the amount of distance from Salt Lake City as we are to DIA, 42 miles runway to runway. But yet, and they get funding over triple what we get, and they have scheduled air service. And that population base doesn't have to run down to Salt Lake City and go pay all those fees and pay those big international fees. They get to leave Provo and go to the world. Because, you know, quite frankly, if we could just leave this airport and get to a hub,
Mhm,
and pick Salt Lake as one. If we had Delta come in and service this market, and we're at Salt Lake, you go anywhere in the world from Salt Lake.
mhm,
You leave here and you get to Dallas. You leave here and get to Chicago. You're at a hub, you can get connecting flights to go anywhere in the world.
Right.
So it is frustrating. And all of those parking fees and all of that hotel room and all of that stuff should be right here in Loveland, Colorado.
sure. So what, because, you know, the more people I've engaged with about issues at the airport and, you know, again, wanting this for myself in my family, and I know many other people do, what can people do that are watching this or reading the articles to try to bring attention and prioritize our airport? What can we do?
So this is interesting because airports are a lot of times considered the playground of the rich. It's just that little playground for the guy with the hobby airplane, or it's that corporate rich guy that just goes in and out, and you know, he's that 1%. But in reality, airport is nothing more than a giant piece of infrastructure that belongs to the taxpayers.
Mhm,
And the unique thing about an FAA approved airport, which we have, is that when you have improvements, unlike a city park. So compare a city park to the airport. City park provides open space, provides a fun place for people to play, exist. When Loveland wants to build a city park, they need 100% of the funds to build that park.
mhm,
The FAA has a program called grant assurances. And I'm going to tick off the staff over there when I say this, but because I make it sound too cavalier, but it's really the reality of it is the FAA has 90% matching funds. So if you want to build $1 million playground in a park in Loveland, or you want to build $1 million improvement at the airport, in Loveland, you need $1 million. At the airport, you need 100,000. Because if it's an approved project, the FAA comes in with 90% matching funds.
wow, okay.
And I've been hammering the tsunami bell and I've been screaming, but they just lay it off on me and say, well, it's not how it works and blah, 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 blah. Well, I watch our peer group airports get it. I
Right.
watch airports in back east that have zero population base get hundreds of millions of dollars. It's all political. Squeaky wheel is going to get the grease. We have state senators. We have a governor that have a strong political power back in DC right now. We should be hammering this. There should be 1 million people going, we want an airport.
Mhm,
We have
okay.
1,100 acres at this airport. It has interstate and it has rail. We barely have a sign on the interstate.
Right.
Like there's a plywood sign on the interstate. We have no rail or freight coordination between this airport and the rail. Like 90% of airports would die to have one or the other.
Right.
So again, it's a capitalist thing. It's where do you get a rate of return? what's doing your best for a public company. If a public company owned this, the public company would have to make money at this airport, or they go broke and the stockholders change the board of directors and they fire everybody.
Right.
Right. So if this airport was privately held or publicly held through a Wall Street company, I can promise you it'd be different.
Right.
Because it flies under the radar, no pun intended, and it doesn't get the attention, and people don't really know what they're missing.
Right. Right.
You know, you get quite a bit of chatter when Avelo Airlines was here a year ago. They were doing great. We took it. We went out to Vegas. We went to Bakersfield. It was awesome. And then boom, they're gone.
Right.
So and ironically, I complained about that, and I was told it was their longest route from Bakersfield or from Burbank, and fuel prices. That's what drove them out. Lo and behold, they went down the road to Colorado Springs, and they're actually right now today, you can get a flight out of Colorado Springs on Avelo. So no, I'm not going to listen to the excuses anymore. I'm just not.
Gotcha. Okay. We are wrapping up on time.
Okay.
So would it be correct to say we need to, pardon me, talk to our council representatives, talk to our governor, Senate representatives, et cetera, and ask, like, just be more demanding if we would like an airport that functions in our.
I believe it needs to go this way. I think we need to have a board that has a staff that has a great plan. And you get the great plan in place, and then you go and you lobby for the funds to get the plan done.
Got it.
And I can tell you, you know, that 10% delta, I think the airport needs over $100 million of improvements. I don't think it's this $25 million terminal. I think we should have a $100 million terminal. I think we should have parking garages, and I think we should have all of the cool things that everybody else gets. I think we should have restaurants out there. But I do think, Jessica, that you have to have a plan, and then you act on the plan. And right now we don't have a plan. Like, we can't even keep a crosswind runway open because of a misaligned construction trailer. Right. And then we don't correct it. We don't, in my company, if we had that day, I would have hooked the pickup up to the construction trailer. And again, they're going to get mad at me because they're going, oh, there's electrical out there. No, I would have moved it that day. I would have run extension cords over, and I would have kept the air safety number one that day. So yeah, I'm frustrated, and the staff knows it. And you know, it's no secret, they don't like me. Anybody, ambassador of change gets, we call it the slapping machine. But I will tell you that airport needs change. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. Anything else you want to say? Any other final comments?
No, I'm actually really excited about the whole region. And as you know, we got Bass Pro over there, and we're super excited about the area, but I'm excited about the change coming.
Cool. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time and your insight, and we will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.